and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2011 action movie Fast 5, or as it is also known, Fast and Furious 5, which, as that name might suggest, is the fifth entry into the Fast and Furious franchise. This time again, directed by Justin Lin, following his directorial stints with the third and the fourth movies in this series. So, as a disclaimer, once again, I may give some spoilers for this film and others in the Fast and Furious franchise. They are getting a bit more convoluted now, so please do switch off now if you don't want to hear any of the plot details for the movie, for any of these films. But please do come back though if you have, when you've watched the films, and let me know what you thought. I'm always so excited to know. So, this movie follows on somewhat from the very end of the fourth movie, released in 2009, with Brian O'Connor, as played by Paul Walker, and Mia Toretto, as played by Jordana Brewster, undertaking a daring, high-octane prison break for Dominic Toretto, as played by Vin Diesel, following his capture at the end of the fourth movie. We then catch up with a team on the run in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, performing a train heist for a collection of impounded cars, along with Dominic's childhood friend Vince, as played by Matt Schulze, who we of course last saw in the first movie. All is not what it seems, however, and the heist goes south, and our team take on one of the cars. But it turns out that this car used to belong to the Brazilian drug lord Hernan Reyes, as played by Joaquim de Almeida, who, along with the US authorities, launch a manhunt for Dominic, Brian and Mia. What our protagonists discover is that the car's navigation system holds the key to each of Reyes's money houses, each holding over 11 million US each. They then start to hatch a plot and put together a team of familiar faces from some of the previous movies, along with a couple of new faces, in order to undertake the heist of all heists, in order to set them up for life, and so bring down Reyes in the process. So, for me, cards on the table, this is probably one of the best entries in the franchise up to this point, following the first movie. It isn't without its negative points, which I'll discuss as I'm going along, but pound for pound, it is much better constructed and executed than the last three movies, absolutely. With a lighter approach for most of it, and a real kind of Ocean's 11 meets the Italian Job feel. Well, with quite a bit of nitro thrown in, you know, for good measure, with some excellent characters and some outstanding action sequences. Granted, got to be taken with a pinch of salt sometimes, especially the finale, but nonetheless, they are there, you know? But no, the finale, it has to be one of the funnest of the franchise overall. It is not heavy or bogged down in rhetoric, or, as in the case as we progress in the series, has the potential to end the world. It is a nice, easy, sleight-of-hand heist with lots of fun smash-ups and ludicrously over-the-top stunts that can simply be enjoyed for what it is. I'm not sure that it is based on much reality, but then that isn't quite what this franchise is known for, right? Hence the pinch of salt. But ignore this and you're going to have a blast. Tone-wise, for me, this movie is split into half, and you can almost tell when this switch happens. It almost feels like it's two separate movies in this sense, which kind of been tagged together. It doesn't feel disjointed because of the way that it is put together, but the movie starts pretty much with that kind of downbeat tone of the fourth movie. Lots of brooding looks, no comedy, and played fairly straight. I'd hesitate to use the word miserable, but it was obviously trying to kind of portray that downbeat and downtrodden state that the characters were at that point in the series. It is a little dreary at this point, if I'm honest, although it does include some excellent kind of rooftop parkour action sequences, but it just kind of start and stop a little overall as it kind of goes at that point. But then we almost completely forget about this point when we move into the second part of the film, if you like. We then kind of start to form this kind of crack team that will then start to kind of feature so prominently in the later films, and to what then becomes Dominic's new family, if you like. From here, the film takes a much lighter tone, with witty one-liners mostly coming from Tyrese Gibson, for a little bit of light relief. The whole visual of the film becomes brighter, and it's much, much more fast-paced. In fact, the film itself overall is transitional in nature, almost kind of being a bridge between the more grounded, race-focused, crime caperish films, shall we say, and those which are going to kind of follow with more the grand villain, more and more outrageous stunts. And with our team having to kind of save the world on more than one occasion. Not just your kind of tyrannical, typical drug lord anymore. Not saying that's a bad thing. I'm in the camp of loving this franchise throughout, you know, as I've already stated in some of our previous reviews, and certainly the intro for this series. Be sure to check them out if you haven't already. But I am simply highlighting where this film kind of sits with regards to its overall style and with its themes and the canon, if you like, of the overall franchise. So touching there on the tone and one character in particular, this film does actually bring back a number of characters from previous movies in this series, and does act almost like kind of a way to kind of tie them into the overall arc of the films that's starting to form, in an attempt to make the film seem more like an overall canon than perhaps they have done, or, you know, up to this point. Which was quite a neat idea. I'm going to say this quite a lot in my reviews as well. I thought especially clever when you consider the initially disjointed and misaligned nature of the second and the third movies in this area. So, you had Matt Schulze reprising his role as Vince from the first movie, Tyrese Gibson reprising his role as Roman Pierce, and Chris Bridges, Ludacris, reprising his role as Tej Parker from the second movie, Sung Kang reprising his role as Han Lu from the third and fourth movies, and finally Gal Gadot reprising her role as Giselle Yazar from the fourth movie. So, there is even a small cameo from Eva Mendes as Agent Monica Fuentes, again last seen in the second movie. So, it is, in a very tantalising end credit sequence, which does kind of set up the cliffhanger, if you like, for the next movie. So yeah, quite a few returning characters to enjoy in this one. It really does feel like this family is coming together at this point. But also, there are a number of new characters introduced, with some of the most notable being Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, who plays Luke Hobbs, a US DSS agent sent to capture and bring in our group of fugitives. This, of course, being the very first movie which introduces Hobbs into the Fast and Furious franchise. We see some great comedy and on-screen chemistry, also, should I say rivalry? But it is, you know, from between Diesel and Johnson, who I must say do light up that screen every time they are together in this movie specifically. It was great to see these two titans clash. What I would say is that going into this movie for the first time, I was kind of worried about the introduction of Dwayne Johnson into the franchise. You know, as apart from the third movie, it's pretty much been Diesel and Walker it's their show, isn't it? You know, in some form. But Johnson, he's a commanding presence, but he didn't deter from this at all, in my opinion, and not in the way that I thought he would. And in fact, dare I say that his character actually enhanced this film, along with the other characters, kind of brought in to pull off this heists of all heists. Of the negative aspects of the movie, are there any? Portraying the use of women. I mean, there's most of the same in most of the films that we've had up to this date, but I think it's noticeable in this one. Mostly they're in the background. The film does actually feature two very strong female characters in the form of Giselle and Mia, the latter which never really gets far with the action and involvement in the overall story than she kind of has done in the previous outings, which she gets a bit more, which is nice to see, but still not as prominent as such. But in sequences akin to the other movies, we do visit a street race. And for the whole scene, I don't think we actually get to see any of the faces of the females, if you know what I mean. No, don't get me wrong, the hot and sexy theme of the street race was a prominent feature in those earlier movies. I just think in this film, it wasn't needed. And they glossed over that race itself. So what were they achieving, you know? But even though Gal Gadot's character is indeed seen to be very strong and independent, as indeed she was in the last film in the series, the fourth one. It almost seemed like for a while, every new scene you saw her in, she was wearing less and less clothes each time. And again, this perhaps kind of deterred a little from what the film had built up for her character in terms of her involvement in the group and that edge that she had. What I did like, however, was that you could tell that Kang's character, Han, did really fancy Gadot. However, this was handled in a really kind of sweet and almost kind of sheepish way with respect to Kang's advances, if you like. None of that kind of lecherous, kind of wolf-whistling comedy in this respect. In fact, from nobody with respect to Gal Gadot's character. Not so much the others. But, so yes, treatment of females less than ideal, we'll go with that. It's not over the top, disrespectful particularly. It does just reinforce the women as trophies stereotype. Another thing is that with this film being transitional, shall we say, between the two main styles of the franchise, as touched on, it does opt to all but remove the race elements, which had become kind of this trademark of the series, which a little bit disappointing. We do visit a race in the movie, like I said, and then all of a sudden it's been run, and that is it. It's done. The only other race we have is between 4 of the main characters and 4 stolen police cars. Fun as it was, it's not the same as perhaps we had been previously kind of dealt with, you know, in the previous movies. Furthermore, it doesn't really put Rio de Janeiro nor Brazil in the most favourable of light. Being painted as a den of drugs, injustice, and having a corrupt police force, albeit for one singular officer. But overall, this is an excellent entry into the Fast and Furious franchise, with a real transitional feel between the early and the later films in the series, seeing out the tone and the feel of the movies which preceded it, and setting up the basic format for what is then to come. It is a fun movie throughout, and with a real kind of light feel once we get to that crown caper element, and with a kind of a real kind of tongue-in-cheek, high-octane finale that brings together some great characters for a real blast of a movie. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk, and definitely love to have you back. But most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.